Welcome to the Designing Hollywood podcast in association with the John Campea Show. I am your host, Robert Meyer Burnett. The Designing Hollywood podcast show is dedicated to all things movies, the movie industry, and its talented professionals.
Hi, I'm Gilbert Musali, the new president and CEO of Western Costume, welcoming Designing Hollywood back to Western. You're at the biggest costume house in the U.S., the oldest costume house in the U.S. We've been around over 112 years now. We consider ourselves the one-stop shop for all your costuming needs here. With our two extra buildings next door, we're at roughly around 150,000 square feet. There are roughly 2.5 million costumes. If you need to get supplies, we can help you with that. If you need fabric, we can help you with that. Order fabric from around the world, anywhere you need. Deck out a full army if you want in our military department. Here's our supply store, catering to all your costuming needs. Thank you, Designing Hollywood, for coming in to see Western Costume. Hope to see you soon.
Today's episode is sponsored by the Western Costume Company. Today's special guest is costume designer Vera Chow, and she is currently most known for her work on seasons 10 and 11 of AMC's The Walking Dead and Netflix's action dramedy The Brother's Son, starring Academy Award winner Michelle Yeoh. By the way, was also a Bond girl, and people forget about that. Film, art, and design was her coping mechanism when she was young, while she was being bullied as a child in Hong Kong, and therefore determined to move to the U.S. She knew she wanted to be a costume designer since she was 13 years old. Throughout the 15 years of her career, she has worked on films and series worldwide, spanning from North America, South America, to as far as East Asia and Central Asia. She's covered genres from horror to sci-fi to romantic comedies, comfortably leaping back and forth from $1 million art films to $100 million epics. She is known for her penchant to acquire anything from thrift store pieces to bed sheets and taking everything apart and rebuilding them into entirely reimagined costume changes, much to the chagrin of her tailors and agers. And as her experience grew, she also became an outspoken advocate for AAPI representation for the below-the-line film workers. Without further ado, it is our great pleasure to welcome costume designer Vera Chow to the Designing Hollywood Show. Vera, welcome. It's so good to have you.
Hello. Oh my gosh, that intro. Wow, thank you. Who's that?
That is you. You're coming to us all the way from Hong Kong, across the international date line. It's 2:30 in the morning there. I want to thank you for doing the show.
Staying awake for you.
So thank you. I appreciate that. I have to say, I'm looking at your career, you've worked on a lot of really interesting stuff, and you jumped between feature films and TV shows back and forth. I mean, you'd be a costume designer on the Patton Oswalt movie, big fan. You'd be the costume designer, but then you'd jump on and be a costumer on a TV show, and then back to another film. I mean, I thought that was, in terms of learning, it seemed like you would do anything. You weren't snobby about what you did. You really just delved into the craft. Is that true?
Be a hustler. That is, I had to hustle. I mean, I moved here by myself when I was 17. Well, I'm not here right now. I'm in Hong Kong. I moved to the U.S. when I was 17, and I wanted it so bad. I was like, I would do anything. And at that point, I also don't know the roles. I don't know what's a designer. I don't know what's a costumer. I had to learn, and I'm glad I did, because I don't want any role in a costume department to not understand what the other role is doing, which is starting to become a pattern. I would like that to go back to for us to just know each other's work and value each other's skills.
I totally agree with that. I mean, I do the same kind of thing, jumping around from different positions, and I think that's the best way to learn. I mean, I love the fact that you started out, you worked on the original Sex and the City as a costume assistant back in the day. And then you were...
Pat Steele doesn't even remember me. I was so scared. I was there for a little bit, and I was just a PA, and I was cleaning. I remember I was like cleaning up the floor, but Pat's beloved poodles would then step all over it. And I'd be like, I just cleaned it. And I love dogs. Get these poodles out of here. But,
But
I
I
was like, do I
love
really want to do this?
your TV work and stuff. You did all different kinds of things. You worked on an episode of The Apprentice. The show Believe, what I actually watched. Marco Polo as a costume supervisor. That was an amazing show. The Blacklist. You worked with my beloved James Spader. I love The Blacklist and all these shows. This Is Us. You did an episode of that. I mean, you incredible TV shows, and then at the same time, you were doing movies. You were being a full-blown costume designer on film. I got to ask you, was this something you always wanted to do from a young age, and were you inspired by films in Hong Kong growing up? Because I love Hong Kong
So,
cinema.
the fun fact is, I actually never grew up watching Hong Kong movies. There is this whole thing of, um, if you want to have a future in the West, or the West being America, Canada, if you want to make it out of Asia, you need to expose yourself to as much Western content as possible. So a lot of our culture is lost because we were actively avoiding Hong Kong films,
Wow.
which I regret it now because I'm trying to catch up. I'm making up for lost time now when there are Americans telling me, did you see this? I'm like, what? So, but I did. But like but I remember when I was a kid, like Western movies actually informed a lot of my choices. Kindergarten Cop was one of them. I don't know why. I think it's because my dad was a huge Arnold fan. So
Kindergarten Cop's actually a pretty good movie.
the original,
I just
so
bought
good.
it recently, and Richard Tyson is an actor who not a lot of people know, but he's the villain in that movie, and he's great.
He's so good. Dominic. Anyways, it was terrible. Wow. That's why I'm a designer and I'm not an actor. But yeah, I was all over the place just because I'm not one of those costume designers that are like, I love fashion. And the fashion oriented costume designers are also incredible. They have a skill set I don't have after I follow Mandy Lyon's career closely. I've worked at Pat Film. Like, how do they know these things? It's like they have two jobs. They know everything about fashion, but they design fantastic movies. How do you do it? I just know how to put stunt people in clothing that they do not die in. Like, I was like, this is stretchy. Okay, good luck. See you. Like,
What? Now, well, then take us through. There's a lot of people. Either people sort of learned on their own, learned by doing, and then they found their way into the business. And there's a lot of designers that have a pretty rigorous academic background. How did you get into the business, and what sort of track did you take?
so it was a little bit of both because I still think I don't want to sound like I have so much imposter syndrome. I'm like, well, how do I do what Pat Field does and all that? But at the same time, you know how there are also designers that are amazing at shibori dyeing. There's like, crafting. Their hobby is to make things. And I'm like, does that make me a poopy designer? Because when I'm not working, I just want to eat snacks. But we have very different types. I think I'm the school of designer that cares the most about the story, and at a risk of sounding cliche, they're like, I'm a storyteller. I'm cringing to saying it, but I'm a storyteller where clothing is my language. Wow. DPs don't come from me, but that's how I feel. So I would learn specific skill for the script I get. I'm
Wow.
not
Okay.
like, yeah, heavily fashion or heavily like period. I'm happy to learn, and I rely very heavily on my assistant designers to be an expert in that genre because my expertise is to break down the script, character development, working with lighting, with props. My heart and soul is in the collaboration with other departments. That's my 90% of my concern.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
how did you get into it? Like, what was your first job in the industry?
So interning, when interning was still illegal in our universe, um, I was interning in commercials. So this fantastic commercial stylist, Elizabeth Shine, shout out. She is still, doing her thing in LA. I owe so much to her. and I owe so much to Amy Westcott. Amy gave me my first movie job, and Elizabeth Shine is the one that taught me everything as an intern, from doing receipts. Like we're doing commercials. So I have to learn how to shop, how to do receipts, how to pack it up, how to dress an actor, how to supervise, how to design, because stylists do everything. And then Amy gave me a chance to do Big Fan, and I just transported all my knowledge from commercial world to Big Fan. So these two people, I'm sure they're sick of me naming them, but I owe them a lot. Pretty much, yeah, my whole beginning.
So take us. So you get this job on Big Fan, Patton Oswalt film, that and Big Fans, and Robert Siegel directed it.
Mm-hmm.
When you got this first gig as a full-blown costume designer, how did you begin? What now that you're doing a whole film, you have the script, you start with the script. Take us through your process?
My very first time figuring out the process. Oh my gosh, I don't even remember. Um, what did I do? I mean, I leaned a lot on Elizabeth on advice on how to do it. And, there was no sync on set back then. I think everything was like Excel or handwritten. I do believe there are quite a bit of continuity mistakes there because, learning curve. Thank God everyone was in football jerseys the whole time, so we made it. It was such a strange throw me into the deep end. And I know that's like a very privileged thing to say, because most people cannot dream of suddenly being thrown into the deep end to design it. But I was very lucky because I was still assisting Elizabeth back and forth during that. And she took me through a lot of it, I think.
Yeah, but in the entertainment business, you just take the opportunities when they come. I don't think it's necessarily privilege. It's these things come up and you have to, you either sink or swim, do or die. I mean, I think a lot of people don't quite get that. They think that there's some path they have to follow, and I don't think that's
There's
necessarily
no
true.
path. There are designers that have only designed. They go from styling to indies, and the jobs get bigger and bigger because they're good. And there are designers that started like a normal corporate chain, PA, costumer, supervisor, and designing. They go back and forth. Like I've seen it which other way, and it's, I mean, it's showbiz. There's no rules.
No, it's
It's the
true.
most lawless industry out there.
Now, did you, like, were you studying, doing any kind of like academic studying, or were you when you were offset, were you going to museums and studying color or frescoes from 400 years ago and any of that?
I was. Well, I did a regular bachelor's degree first
Oh,
for
you
my
did?
parents in Rochester, but I mean, it's not a real regular degree. It's still English and film and theater studies, as regular as it can get, before I went to Parsons, because I was
Oh,
like, I got a
okay.
BA, mom. Can I do art things now? So I did all those things, and before that I was like, like you mentioned, I knew I was going to do this since I was 13.
Right.
So I was hijacking. When I mean hijacking, I'm forcing myself into designing every school play, every fashion show in Hong Kong, every school art show. I just elbowed my way into it, and I made my work so sensational. Like, was I actually good? I don't know. I think I made a costume out of saran wrap and duct tape. But like, I was like, I need to do this. So I was so sensational in my work that I won every single one of them, I think just by sheer shock factor.
Wow.
And yeah, so I need to find those photos at some point. So yeah, that's how I learned. I actually was mostly self-taught until I made my way to Parsons.
But still, I mean, you were obviously having a passion for it, starting at an early age, creating your own opportunities. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's another thing that, if this show can impart things to people, to the audience, is that you are a big part of why you become successful, and you took it upon yourself, as you just said, to go after this
Yes.
stuff. I think there's a thought that today these things come to people, and that's
Oh,
in the
you
end.
don't TikTok your way into it. Now it just sound real boomery, but
No,
yeah.
but no, but I mean, I think that's part of it, though. I think we do have I know you can get your work out there and you can be seen on social media. That was
Mhm.
something that 10, 15 years ago didn't exist, and now it does.
Right.
Well, let me ask you that since you brought it up. Um, do you use, I mean, you have a great website and your Instagram
Mhm.
page is pretty interesting. Do you, because it's a combination of stuff, you know, you got personal stuff and
Yeah.
you've got work stuff on there, which I
Yes.
thought is pretty cool because a
Oh,
lot of
thank
designers
you.
keep it all. I think it's kind of fun to have work combined with personal stuff so you get a sense of who a person is.
Mhm.
I don't know if somebody, you know, if I was going to some class about how do you get a job in the industry, they would necessarily recommend that, but I like it.
I know. I mean, it also, I mean, the way my Instagram is structured is, I mean, I already have the website for the official things to keep it clean, keep it PC, so to speak. I have my fantastic publicist, Marilyn, who I'm sure if I go out of line, she'll be like, this is not the time nor place. And my amazing agent, Lori, would probably also reel me in and be like, don't respond like that. So I have that. So my Instagram, they do not control my Instagram, Lori and Marilyn. I do whatever I want there. So, and how I am on my Instagram is sometimes, unfortunately, how I am at production meetings. I don't know if it helps me or hurts me, but at least people remember me. So,
Right, right. Well, I no, but I think that the idea that you sort of grabbed what you wanted to do and made it your own is a really important lesson. Now, how do you think that in doing that, did it bolster your confidence? Because you did have a background in I know it was like you said you were in school still and you were young, but
mhm.
knowing that you could put on a show and knowing that you could do these things had to have helped you and at least build confidence by the time you made it to doing actual work on real sets.
I think the craft part of it, yes. Because I already have a sensibility on tailoring and drawing and art and
Mm,
stuff like that. So the second part I have to work on, which I'm sure some people also have to work on on that, but maybe not everybody, is the fact that coming from Hong Kong, Hollywood is a daunting fantasy land. It's so larger than life and so it's like impossible going to space. Like it's not like in America they move from a small town and try to make it in the film industry. With us, it's not even that. It's impossible. It is a completely foreign universe that might as well be a cartoon, might as well be Dune as far as we're concerned. So this is like a further stretch than the lottery. So I think my biggest confidence, like my biggest threat in my confidence was that is that how can I believe I could possibly make it in this fantasy land? This is not even a real place. So I have the craft. The confidence actually came much later. And I think most of my confidence came from sometimes I hesitate on crediting that show because of Harvey Weinstein, but Marco Polo was a huge, I think it was my biggest turning point in my career where I realized my biculturalness is a strength.
right.
It's not a weakness, it's not something I have to hide. And also it did take my imposter syndrome away because when I got on that job, I was like, why am I here? I'm 30. The show is 200 million. Oh my God, they hired the wrong person. They're gonna know and they're gonna fire me. And then no matter how hard it got, like somehow I was still there. Every day I wake up thinking I was gonna get fired, and I'm like, oh my God, they I don't know why they want me here. And it kind of recalibrated a lot for me, that show.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, so when you get on a show that large, I mean, and obviously it's a period piece, how do you start? Where do you begin on a show that's that large? Do you start with research? Do you like how much prep time did you have on something like that? How'd you begin?
Well, Well, Marco Polo was such an unusual start that I gotta say, after that, nothing was difficult for me ever again. Everything was easy after Marco Polo because I went in halfway. They had a supervisor that was bowing out, but at that point, they were split between Italy, Malaysia, Beijing, Kazakhstan. And I
Wow.
was just supposed to jump in and just know it. At that point, mind you, I've only done indie films in New York. Why was I there to this day? I don't know what they were thinking. What a risk. And they were what, 2 weeks away from shooting. So I wasn't part of the research. I wasn't part of the script breakdown. And because it was a pretty hasty retreat from the previous costume supervisor, I did what I did on Big Fan again. They just go, good luck, figure it out. Now everything is in 3 languages. I was like, excuse me? And and I I think I actually just had to figure it out mostly on my own because Tim Yip was a very sought after designer, so he wasn't around all the time. So I I had this is gonna sound very odd, but I had the most supportive line producer, Aaron Shershow, and the most supportive stunt coordinator, Brett Chan. Man, these 2 people do not need any more praise, but I just gave them some. That actually kept me up the whole time. They basically taught me how to do this, not costume people. And I don't know how to explain that, but maybe that's why I still mess around with stunt shows so much, is because I think like a stunt man. I don't know if that's a good, you know what? That's a terrible thing. I do not think like a stunt man. Take that back.
Well, now you started early. So on Marco Polo, you were the costume supervisor and you were working with a designer.
Mm-hmm.
How did
Yes.
how was that relationship, and take us through how the two of you worked with one another?
Oh, it might be a risk of sounding non-PC. It wasn't easy. He was Tim as a diva, justifiably so. You know, he is
Sure.
considered like a huge genius in Hong Kong and China. I mean, he was the first. He was the first and only to this day Hong Kong Chinese designer to have a costume design Oscar. You know, to this
Right.
day. For now, just kidding, Tim. I love you so much. Um, and so actually, his team in China also taught me a lot because I was mostly dealing with them. And at that point, I was dealing with Tim, and the show was so big. Tim has multiple assistant designers. And I forgot where I was going with this. Damn it. But yeah, I was collaborating with him mostly on Skype because back then it was Skype. We had no
Right.
Zoom. And his English was good, but not enough to have creative meetings with department heads and directors. So I actually learned by translating him. A lot of
Wow.
things I learned by translating for him. Yeah. And then I
Wow.
was like, I'm just gonna put this into my little mental archive here, and translate it to English. So yeah.
It's
And
interesting
I
because you
was,
don't have
yeah.
any. I mean, I know you can learn English in Hong Kong, but you have no accent at all.
Oh, I used to have a British accent.
Did you really?
I learned English in England, with I learned British English growing up,
Wow.
with the lorry and the what is that? The lift and the mobile phone. Yeah.
Right.
I changed my accent in America because they were like, "What did you just say?" And I was like, "Cell phone, cell phone."
No, it's pretty great. I mean, you can't. I was listening for any that I can't hear anything. That's well done.
Oh, there will be little hints of it. Don't worry, you'll find it soon enough. But
So
yeah, I learned by translating him and his team to John Fusco, to all the directors. Thank God I didn't have to translate anything to Harvey.
who they just overturned his conviction in New York today.
Oh,
Mm. But he's still been prosecuted in L.A., so they're not letting him out of jail.
okay.
Yeah.
He better not. He better not.
Yeah. Um, don't mean to bring that up, but since you did, I just figured I
I
would just
know. I
convey the
brought it up.
news. I would just convey the
Fun
news.
fact. I don't mind. I didn't know I was in Hong Kong. I wasn't reading. But fun fact is, every once in a while he would visit the set, and you will kind of feel the air in our Pinewood, Malaysia lot when we know he's coming. Jaguar cars start coming up. The golf cars start being real shiny and beautiful. I have secretly parked in his parking spot once. Thank God it wasn't that day. It was a very convenient spot. And And then my mom chose that week to also visit me. What an unfortunate coincidence. And my mom and Harvey both decided to visit set on a day we were shooting an orgy.
Of course.
Yeah. In retrospect, that should have been like some sort of comedic segment. But at that moment, I was too terrified to digest how ludicrous that moment was. And then my mom very cutely was like, "Why are you here? Everyone's naked." And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Modesty, Merkins, we can leave now because he's here. But yeah, in retrospect, what a wild day that was.
That could be the title of your biography, Modesty and Merkins.
Yeah, Modesty and Merkins. Or why are you here? They're all naked.
Oh, that's good too. Actually, that might even be better. Why are you here? They're all naked.
They're all naked.
A costume designer's odyssey. Um, uh, I would read the hell out of that book. So you learned a lot on Marco Polo, and that's a huge show.
It was.
What was the most surprising thing that you did learn on something of that size? What was the thing that surprised you, maybe?
Everything truly can be solved with money. Um, B, as much as it seemed like an impossible task at that time, in retrospect, I realize however big like in my mind when I was there at when I was 30 at the time, because the show I think around hit its 10-year anniversary around now. At that point I was like, there's so much I don't know. Who do I call? What do I do? How do I hire? In retrospect, I realized it's just the same shit of a different size. It's actually the same. It's not that daunting because when you have the money, when you have the crew, the biggest takeaway is lean on your crew. That's
Right.
my biggest takeaway, is the only way something this big becomes something you can manage is because you're sharing the workload. I didn't know about Angels. I didn't know about all the costume rental houses in Italy and Spain and Kazakhstan and Hong Kong and China. That's my crew. I don't know shit. So you just have to rely on your crew. And I think that show actually taught me to put an incredible amount of trust on my team.
Right.
That I hope that's why people like working with me, because I put so much trust on my team. Maybe that's just me being lazy and go like, I don't know, what do you think?
No, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Look, as I was saying before we started recording, I don't think that there's any better place to work than on a production with great people that know their jobs. Because the
Yes.
one thing that people I don't think really quite understand is production people, because time on a film set is quantifiable in money. Every second has a dollar value associated to it. You know, you're going to shoot for 12 hours. You know what the budget is for the day. You can back that budget into seconds. So each
Yes.
second is like $20 each second.
Yeah, that's why our OT is like 0.18. It's because they were counting the cash.
Yeah, and I don't think people understand that. So when you have people on set, one of the great joys is you're working with the very best people in the world, because if they're not on your set. You know, they don't get
Yes.
that. You have to
Marco
be
Polo was the best of the world. They have the best ADs from Australia, from England. It was a whole different ball game from what I was used to in. I was just a sponge. Basically, everything I did on Marco Polo is to A, fake it till you make it, and B, absorb everything and then pretend you already knew it the whole time.
right. No, and that's one of the things, though. I think that's one of the great joys of working in the industry, especially in production, because of the caliber of people, and you have every facet of society on a film set. You've got blue collar, white collar, all kinds of people. You know, you've got people that can fix any. Yeah, I love it so much because, you know, I've often said, if you want to solve the world's problems, find a film crew. And just
we fixed it already.
Yeah, just unleash.
We're the first to fix everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, let's put like non-binary issues, like gender. Oh wait, like I mean, I actually sometimes fight with friends about, I don't know how, like how saucy I can get here. I
You can get as saucy as you want.
fight with friends about, like, they would say things like, I read on the news like Hollywood is so racist, Hollywood is so sexist. I'm like, no, you think it is because you hear about it everywhere. We have historically been the arts, arts, media, and entertainment has historically been the first change maker in the history of mankind. They think it's behind because we publicize and we like Me Too, Black Lives Matter, all of that has Asian hate, all of it. The voice is amplified by our industry
Right.
before other corporate America or corporate China or whatever even know the verbiage of it.
Well, I
I
mean,
don't know. Maybe I just
again,
live with this beauty of loving my industry so much, but
well, production crews like you
work
just,
is came from us.
yeah, you just talk about it. Like I've been working on film crews since 1989, and all it's ever been is diverse. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Exactly.
it's your crazy carnival barkers and the crazy circus that you're working with. It's all of us misfit people
Yes.
that all come together to create. That's why it's been such an odd thing to listen to all these people talk about who can't get into Hollywood. That has never been my experience, especially in production. Like if
Right.
you
I
want,
think it's been a difficult thing for them to get to the top, but
right,
inclusion has always been there. And they say it's so difficult to get to the top because we pointed it out, because to this day I still believe it's still more difficult to get to the top for people of color in other industries. We're the first to face it.
right,
I
yeah.
just think our industry is the first to face it, so we get the most flack.
It's interesting though, because I've worked with all different kinds of people.
Yeah,
I've one of the things that I've always thought about film crews is how diverse they actually are. And in terms of
that's why I love
inclusion,
it.
no one really cares as long as you can do your job. Like
Yes,
it goes back to time and money. It doesn't matter
yes,
whether you're short, tall, straight, gay, Republican, conservative, whatever you are. If
yeah,
you're going to do the job well, we want you. we,
yeah.
we just please
I
come.
just I don't I just like people are saying, what do you do if all these strikes and lulls continue? I was like, I don't know. If I'm not in the arts and film and entertainment, I don't know. And when I have conversations with non-film and non-art people, sometimes I forget that they are not like that all the time. Like this is not their normal. And I go, I can't talk to you. I can't talk to you.
Well, they can't understand the lifestyle either. Like
Yes, they
how
can. Yeah.
you're so it's such there's no security. It's like, well, yeah, you're riding a
Yeah.
wave. It's like being a surfer. You're riding a
Yeah. Oh,
wave.
on my grandpa's deathbed, he was still like, "So, do you have a job yet?" I'm like, "It's called The Walking Dead." Yeah, yeah, I
It's
do.
that little show that no one watches and has no spin-offs and you know. Well, let's
Yeah.
talk about that since you brought it up. How'd you get the
Hmm.
gig? Walking Dead, obviously one of the most popular TV shows of all time around the world. And you got on the later seasons, but how'd you
Hmm.
get on the gig, and what was it like dressing that many zombies?
I got on it because, well, Angela Kang, one of the smallest handful of AAPI female showrunners out there. It's a growing number, but it was very few. So I appreciate her giving me a chance. I love her. She's so like, and all the showrun, like all the producers working with Angela Kang are also so open to my ideas. I was expecting so many rules to follow because of the legacy it has. And they're like, no, this is I trust you, and I couldn't believe that they just kind of I was like, this is option one and option two, and that's kind of what I wanted. They're like, okay. So I appreciate that. Actually, when I went on The Walking Dead, there is a huge tone shift in the costumes, and people liked it. I'm happy about that. I think it helped because the story also shifted to Commonwealth, so it was
Yeah, so
fine to have this sort of
can you
force.
kind
Yeah.
of explain that? What was that tone shift, and what I mean, if
So Um, well, the Commonwealth helped with the tone shift because they encountered a civilization that was seemingly completely untouched by the apocalypse.
right,
But upon upon further investigation, like most shows you see with a utopian society, like Get Out, like clearly there's more than meets the eye, and we are doing that through my like costumes wise, for example, like things are almost like vintage America, like Americana, but it doesn't really fit any specific period. We have things that seemingly modern, 80s vintage, 40s, 50s. It was just giving that vibe of postcard, creepily too good to be true. Like
Right.
it was supposedly like an unsettling Rockwell painting. So at that point all the rules are gone, so I can be like, so I guess that was what made my tone shift a little less jarring, because I wasn't really like, so even when the main cast was changing in their, like, maybe not overnight, but a gradual change in their attire and texture and all that, it was still acceptable because we segued through the Commonwealth. And then
Right.
after that, I just ran with it and just got crazier and crazier.
Was it harder, I mean, to come on to a show that's so established and you've got a crew that's probably, a lot of them have worked together for a decade. Was it hard
Yeah.
for you to integrate into that, or did they accept you, or was it easy to just jump right in?
It wasn't too hard. Like, people were pretty amazing, and I never felt like there wasn't like a didn't you know when Glenn died? Like, there wasn't any of that. They
Right.
Because I didn't follow The Walking Dead until I got the job. And while I was interviewing for it, I binged as much as I could. And let me tell you, as much as I love The Walking Dead now, binging a zombie show for like 9 seasons straight during lockdown, it's very unpleasant. However amazing the show is, I was just like, at some point, I was just like, I need some romance. So what the fuck is this? Like, but I did. I binged almost all of it, and whatever I didn't know, they were just like, there wasn't a encyclopedia. Granted, I was expecting to have this like beautiful like Wikipedia encyclopedia of like, this is the summary of The Walking Dead. There isn't. You do have to kind of fly by the seat of your pants. But everyone was happy to explain it to me, and the writers are great. They're great. So I never felt that on it. Yeah.
Did you have I guess, I mean, I've always been a fan of zombie material. I mean, one of my favorite movies is Romero's original Dawn of the Dead from the late 70s.
Mm.
Um, did
Minus Shaun of the Dead, but
Shaun of the Dead's fantastic. Shaun of the Dead
so
takes
good.
place in that universe. You know,
Yes.
it's very much very respectful. It's just what's happening in London. But did you have a philosophy behind, I've always wanted to know this, dressing zombies, like backstories, and because, when you have the undead, where they've been, where they came from, or did you just pick whatever? Like, how do you
This is
dress a zombie?
It actually might not be as interesting an answer as you would like, because
No, it's
we
okay.
have to cater to visual effects. I like, unless it's specified with some backstory, we actually can't give them a backstory, because or else VFX cannot repeat them in post. But so
Oh,
I do grasp at every chance where they have, every once in a while, every episode you have 2 or 3 that are very specific.
yes.
Those will have a backstory. I think about where they are. I try to make, I mean, even though in the script I might not talk about it, I do. Um and But with the Horde, it's just whatever helps the visual effects team
Right. Okay.
made it very easily. But with the main cast and with like featured zombies, my tailor has a quote that she claims that that's all I say, to a point that she engraved it on a whiskey glass and gave it to me as a wrap gift. And she is like, it's in quotes, Vera. It's like, should we just cut it out? Let's cut it out. And apparently that's what I say all the time while holding scissors.
Wow, I like it.
So I guess that's my philosophy on an apocalypse show. Should we cut it? And then just like, yeah.
I mean, that's probably a good way to go, as a defining
Yeah.
philosophy. Why not?
Yes. To the terror of all the people I'm dressing. I'm like, I'll cut it on you. Don't worry, I won't get you. I don't. I've never.
How, like, on a show like that, especially coming in late, it's probably a finely oiled machine. But
Hmm.
what were some of the things? Was there anything that surprised you on The Walking Dead that you saw that you might not have thought about, or something that you learned, like learning about your crew on Marco Polo? Was there a lesson you might have learned while working on The Walking Dead that you hadn't experienced before?
I think, yeah, because I think on a show that big, because my first foray into a big show with Marco Polo was like green screen, blah blah blah. Like and everything on Walking Dead was practical because Sonoy is such a small town. I mean, The Walking Dead basically owned that whole city, smaller city. And like, Oceanside, like everything is there. It's walkable. Actually, it's not that walkable. It's golf cartable, but during COVID, we're not allowed to use the golf cart, so it was walkable. Um, the amount of practical effects was also very inspiring for me because the zombies were, aside from step and repeating the zombies were not CGI generated. They're all real. The effects are real. Our makeup team was real. So it was a very, like, the two biggest shows in my career before The Brother Sun was Marco Polo and The Walking Dead, and the philosophy was entirely opposite to each other.
Wow.
Like so heavy on like just like fake sets and green screen and all that, and then it is everything practical, real jungles, real villages, everything. It's yeah, I learned a lot on both of them.
Hmm.
Never stop learning.
No, no, and well, that I guess brings us to The Brother Sun. I I really liked that show quite a bit. I thought it was. I mean, I loved Hong Kong movies growing up. I started
Hmm.
watching all the Chow Yun Fat stuff that he did, whether it was Better Tomorrow 1, 2, and 3, or even like watching Sweethearts movies like Peking Opera Blues and all that
Hmm.
stuff that started. Not so much the wuxia movies of the 60s and 70s, but really the crime thriller
Right.
triad stuff. And then The Killer and I remember I went and met John
Oh,
Woo at a screening of Hard Boiled at the New Art, and in the early 90s everybody was so excited about Hong Kong cinema. Um, but that's why when I saw The Brother's Son, I saw a trailer for it and people were telling me that I'm like, "Oh, this show's like catnip for me." And I'm like, and I think one of the really interesting things, the byproduct of our streaming era, is how much international content we here in America are exposed to. I mean, who would have thought that Squid Game from Korea would have become such a,
yes,
a
one of the
phenomenal
most
success? I
show.
love seeing that because a lot of people weren't watching Hong Kong cinema in America, and now I
Right.
think
It
with
was a
Paris,
niche and not anymore.
not
Yeah.
anymore. I mean, not anymore. From the explosion of anime to being able to get Squid Game or having Parasite win the
Yeah.
Academy Award for Best Picture, and seeing movies like RRR coming from India. So now it's
Yes.
truly becoming a global marketplace. But talk about how you got the job on Brother's Son. What was it? What did that mean to you as far as design?
It meant it meant everything to me, to a point that I think I was a little overzealous on that show. Other people will tell you stories about that. I'll tell you that some other time. Um, I got the job because of Kevin Tancheron, Byron Wu, the show creator, and man, they went to bat for me because Netflix was like, "Why do we have to fly someone out from New York to LA? Like, we have agents here." So they're like, "No, no, no, no." She grew up in Hong Kong. She speaks Mandarin. She speaks Cantonese. She knows that she literally grew up on that side of the world. She's going to get things that other people don't get, and that they really had to fight for me. Um, so and when I got on it, I wasn't even thinking about, like, we didn't land Michelle for a long time. All I could think about was the pressure of, I feel like this is it. This is everything I've been building up for, is to speak for my people. And that is not the right way to look at it. No person of color should bear the responsibility for speaking of their people. And I do feel like Byron actually also felt a little bit of that pressure. Um, we shouldn't have done that to ourselves because Everyone had a very different experience. As a man, a woman, white, Asian, we're all entitled to our experience. We do not speak for a whole demographic. I think if I forgot that pressure part, I mean, I had so much fun on that show. I would have had more fun if I wasn't having that self-imposed importance that I put on myself. But I have never had so much creative freedom. I know a lot of people say they don't have a lot of creative freedom on big shows. I think I was just very lucky. Walking Dead gave me so much creative freedom. The brother son, it's, oh my god, it's a free reign for me. Like, I don't know if they regret it eventually. Like, the script originally just asked for blow up T-Rexes. Clearly that's not what happened. I was like, do you know how many types of dinosaurs there are? And then I just start like buying pterodactyls and stuff, and I'm like, I really think you should plan your stunts around the pterodactyl. And they're like, wow, we hate you. So I gave it I went very above and beyond, just because it means a lot to me growing up in Hong Kong. I know it was in Taiwan, but just growing up as an East Asian person and now have an East Asian show that, I hate to say it, but for once isn't crewed by non-Asians. The crew was also very diverse, and
Right.
that was amazing.
Well, I mean, the clothes in this show are phenomenal, and all
Oh,
the design,
thank you.
the colors, it all worked together so well. How do you work with a production designer and a director of photography? And did you guys all work in tandem to create a look for the show, because it has such a vibrant feel to it? What was that like for
Yeah,
you?
like I do, like I said earlier, you know how I mentioned that my first line of, like, my first focus is the collaboration, is the filmmaking process. The fashion and the historical part for me comes second, and I rely on my team for that. And so Kevin's direction specifically was like Pulp Fiction, like a comic, like a manga. And I was like, oh, you do not know the type of floodgates you've opened when you say those words to me. I just channeled my entire childhood of Japanese manga and anime, and I was like, bleh, like, here it is, a lot of colors and a lot of texture. I'm gonna go crazy here. So Kim Miles, our DP, he is I mean, he Kim used to go to set in like orange and yellow shirts all the time, so he was very open to me using crazy colors on set. um and it was, what was I gonna say with that? I did work with, the sets I worked with a lot, and hair makeup I worked with a lot. We just try to make everything jive with each other. I mean, like, you can see like the dinosaur sets and the dinosaur pinatas, and then I have my dinosaurs. It was very fun. It was definitely very fun. We have a lot of meetings that ended up with videos of blown up dinosaurs kicking each other. Good times.
Well,
Yeah.
when you have, I mean, I think it's interesting because Michelle Yeoh, she kind of has had this renaissance here in America, but I've been
Hmm.
watching her for the better part of, I mean, we're closing in on, I don't want to say half a century, but for
Yes,
a
but
good
yeah.
40 years, and it's odd, like with Everything Everywhere All at Once, being the way it was, and her role in it, and people finally getting to see her. It's odd to me when you have somebody like this, who I've been watching for decades. Now people are
Hmm.
all of a sudden, oh, look at Michelle Yeoh, and when
I
she
was
was
like,
in,
now you know about
yeah,
her?
yeah, it's
Yes,
wild, and
how I felt too.
she's on Star Trek. She was in Star Trek
Hmm.
Discovery. She played two different roles. She played herself that got killed, and then her mirror universe counterpart, which is now starring in another Star Trek movie, Section 31.
Hmm.
She was a Bond girl on Tomorrow Never Dies with Pierce Brosnan.
Hmm.
So
She
when you
has
got,
done it all.
she's done it all. When you get to, I mean, to me, she's like working, the equivalent in America would be like working with, Jack Nicholson or Robert Redford or
Yeah,
Clint
yeah.
Eastwood or something. I mean, it's
She's a queen. Like, I mean, she's goddess level.
how, when you were going to work with her, and obviously you've done a lot for Asian representation over here. When you're going to work with someone like her, what was that like for you? And is that intimidating, or do you just rub your hands together and say, "Ooh, I can't wait to design for her"?
um, All of the above. First thought that I came to my head is I can finally tell people from home about a show that they will be like, "Who's that?" That they won't be like, "Who?" Because, before that they're like, "Who? Oh, Blacklist? What?" Like, huh? Like,
Right.
they're like, they don't know who any of these people are. So
Right.
I finally, I was like, they're like, "John Leguzam, who?" And I was like, "Don't worry about it." So I was like, oh my God, finally I can tell people back home and they'll actually be like, oh, I know them. Somehow that's all I thought about. I was like, I want to tell my mom and dad. Because at some point way back, they were like, who's Alec Baldwin? And I was like, fine, 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 fine. One day it'll be Chow Yun Fat, one day it'll be Michelle, and you'll be like, yay. And that
Tony
finally
Leung. You
happened.
got to put Tony Leung in linen suits. No one, he's my
I
favorite.
know. Oh, someday. Put it in the universe. Tony, I got you. You know, but intimidating at first, but more excited than anything because not only is she such an icon, when we get Asian cast in Hollywood, it's not common that we also have people that speak the Cantonese dialect.
Right.
Asian aside, there's Mandarin, there's Japanese, there's Korean. Cantonese is a slowly dying language for a multitude of reasons that I should not say while I'm sitting in the city. So when I was just dying to be like, I can bust out in Cantonese while at work. Amazing, and she did that happily with me. And then it evolved to her also making jokes with me and at me on set in Cantonese because no one can know what we're saying. Like I will wear muumuus to set because, I'm wearing a muumu right now. And she would tell me in Cantonese, she's like, why are you wearing pajamas to set? You're at work. I mean, she's joking. And I'll be like, oh, damn it. The mom of, everyone's like mom, everyone's matriarch has said something. I must change.
She's a Chinese mother even when she's not a Chinese mother.
I know she is. She's a Chinese mother. And she was so amazing to work with. She's so smart with her script. Like, when you work with, there's some actors that you work with, you are learning as you talk to them and go like, oh, I never thought about this before. Like Michelle is one of those people. Like who else is like Lila Robbins is another one of those actors that when you talk to them, you're like, I'm getting a I'm I'm getting a lesson in filmmaking like right now, in dissecting a script right now as they tell me what they think about the script. They can get something out of even those most simplistic of storylines. And you're like, oh, your interpretation was much less basic than mine. And then you remember that and I put it into my little archive.
Did
Yeah.
you would because of the you delving into the whole criminal underworld idea of what was going on here? Did you look at any previously existing material at, Hong Kong Triad Films? Did you delve into that at all, or did you go in and create this based on the scripts or based on your own out of whole cloth what you wanted to do?
So, I was subscribing to the philosophy of you have to know all the rules and then you can break them.
Sure.
So, because I also, again, I have this like weird self-imposed, like I must speak for the people, which again, I don't. So I was like, I need to get this right first. I need to get this right first. But that's not really what we want because it's not that colorful. I mean, they're fashionable, like the triads and the gangs are colorful, but they're definitely not as
No.
colorful as the people I made with like golden ponytails and like with crazy walking sticks and the 10 gangs at the end.
Yeah.
No, there's no sporty frat, business frat, religious frat. I made that up. Sorry, Taiwan. I totally made that up. But I watched Hong Kong movies. I watched a bit. I didn't watch any American films about Asian culture. I
Sure.
mean, why would I? I'm from
Yeah.
here. Um, I watch a lot of Taiwanese triad films from like 70s, 80s, all the way to today. But my best research actually came from YouTube, real triads, because real triads in Taiwan are so legit that all their shit is online. They're
Wow.
not hiding anything. Their ceremonies, their parties, their funerals, they're like, if you know the right search terms in Chinese or in Taiwanese, you're gonna see it. You're gonna
Wow.
see them like having the ceremonies with each other. You're gonna see their banquets. You're gonna see how their funeral processions happen. You can see even the funeral processions that have official police motorcades. So it's a lot more legitimized and business sense than whatever we see in Hollywood, that kind of
Sure.
blends the Chinese and the Japanese together, and we hold a machete and we're in the black suit, but we always pop the collar out. No, 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 we don't really do that. Like, so the research came from that, which is way more colorful than any movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Highly recommend. Don't know how everyone else is going to search for it in YouTube, but it is there.
Well, now I
People
want to
with
go on a search for
Woo.
the triads. But
But Big Sun was based on a real person. I modeled it after one of the biggest triad bosses in Taiwan. And then when we got Johnny Koo, he was like, "That's your reference? I know him." And I was like, "Oh, you do now? Okay, all right. Do you like?" And he's like, "That looks great. I'm just like I look just like him." I was like, don't come for me.
no, I mean the show is a lot of fun, and again, I'm sorry that it's only going to get one season, but it's still there. It's you can watch it. I thought the work was great. It was so much fun. It was so entertaining. I really liked the whole familial relationship and all. It was something new and fresh, and I really loved it. I thought it was great. Now let me ask you. You said you didn't grow up watching Hong Kong cinema, but have you seen things like In the Mood for Love?
I have. I backtracked into it. Yes.
Because Wong,
I've had Americans telling me about it. I was like, this can't happen. I cannot have Americans telling me about my own shit. So I backtracked.
because there is so many great, Wong Kar-wai especially. I mean, Fallen Angels and
Walker
Chungking
Wai's use of
Express.
color was not a huge inspiration for me, but it was there. You know, back then, the contrast, I feel like the really big use of contrast is not as it's not as often used than when it like 90s film, 80s film is a lot more brave with their contrast. Now I feel like sometimes we're almost trapped by the need to have a color story,
Right.
a palette. And a palette, I guess, is a foundation, but directors like Wong Kar-wai go crazy. Like orange. Oh, they literally look at like they look at like the color wheel and they just pick whatever's like opposite, like the
Oh yeah.
craziest farthest spot, and then they'll put the same thing in the same frame. And the texture and the patterns, blah, 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 like, and we don't do that as much anymore. You
No.
know? They're like producers always want to see a color story. The color story is like a collection for a fashion capsule.
Yeah.
There's not that much contrast or texture into it. So I did do that a lot. That's why uh, brother son costumes are, what do they call it? It's texturally chaotic, which is kind of my thing.
Texturally chaotic. I like that. But it comes through. I mean, it makes it adds a certain visual panache to what's going on that is unique, and I think that works out. I mean, I like that idea. What a cool. Maybe that's your thing.
Texturally chaotic.
Textural chaos.
Textural chaos. That is my thing.
I like
And
that.
can we cut it? Let's cut it.
Let's.
I mean, the thing is, like, I I really did anything store bought. I rarely did on Brother Son. Like, everything was custom made. I'm so sorry, line producers. That's why I spent $1 million. But even if I bought a jacket, I was like, I need embroidery. And I bought an opening ceremony sweatsuit. I was like, I don't want it to be a sweatsuit anymore. I want it to be a sweatsuit material suit. And then, oh my God, pink would be great.
Wow.
Like, they'll be like, well, what, are you sure? I was like, I don't know. How will we know if we don't try? And then I just dump it, and then we just do it. And then it happened. And then TK wore that pink suit for a long time.
Uh-huh. Now, how
Yeah.
did the actors respond when they must love that.
Amazing. And
Yeah.
that's another beauty of working with everyone that is so stoked to be like it's like working with family. I still talk to most of them just like even like 10 minutes ago. like and the camaraderie is incredible. The just like the joy of everyone. Like even the background, even the hundreds of background, even the 40 stunt people. I don't know. It might not be 40, maybe 50. Like I don't know. Everyone remembered each other's names. Everyone was like so excited to be at work. Even the one stunt guy that was there for 2 days was like, I can't believe we don't have a season 2, because he was just like, it was an experience of a lifetime for all of us to be able to be in that space. And there's a lot of trust in it that they give me, that they were like, I never knew when I was on Siren, when I was on all that, I didn't know how to say that to the costume team, and they share a lot with me. I share a lot with them. But does it also make them more of a diva and needier? Absolutely. Stunt people. Yeah. But it was amazing. There's no barriers. There's so much we can say to each other, and still friends to this day with almost every single one of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it strange for you to see, though, like you talk about coming from Hong Kong and over here, and how much representation, Asian culture is now getting across the
Mhm.
board? Has that been inspirational, or has that been something that's been great to see for you? Did you ever think that was
It
going to happen?
I didn't, because growing up, aside from Tim Yip, there was no other. And Eiko Yoshioka, rest in peace. That's why I said I thought it was like a fantasy, like it's like going to space, because I thought it was never going to happen, minus the fetishized, roles that they force on Lucy Liu or Tia, and that's it. I didn't think I would actually be in this industry while the change is happening. And I actually sit there and have moments about this a lot. I was like, I'm in the thick of it. I'm
Right.
in the thick of diversity, Black, Asian, non-binary, like Indigenous. I am sitting in the middle of the sea change, and I am. This sounds really corny, but I kind of want to say I'm just in awe, and I couldn't believe I am a cog in this situation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
See, for me, I mean, as somebody who's always been seeking out international, and it's been
Mhm.
odd to watch this whole, like, there's not enough Asian representation, and I was always like, but there's a lot of Asian cinema,
There's a lot.
and it's
Exactly.
it's
And what
it's
people are
it's
just Yeah, we just have to recalibrate it in a way that, like, there's a lot of Asian cinema, and then we have to recalibrate it in a way that there's a little segue of middle ground to Hollywood, such as, our Squid Games that make it big. And then, we have Marco Polo that made it a bit of a dent, Shogun. And then it opens the channel back to like, whatever complete Asian cinema means. I don't even know what that means. That's not even the right term, I feel like. But it almost like kind of comes back around.
A special thank you to founder and executive producer Martika Ibarra, co-founder, costume designer, the legendary Marilyn Vance, and of course, John Campea from the John Campea Show. Thank you to all of our viewers for tuning in, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tune in to the audio version wherever you listen to podcasts. I am, of course, your host, Robert Meyer Burnett, and you can find me on Instagram at rmburnett, or find me on Twitter at BurnettRM, or on YouTube at PostGeek Singularity. Thanks very much. Like, subscribe, and give us your comments. What would you like to see on the channel? Right down below. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode of Designing Hollywood.